Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we are continuing down the road of Metroidvanias, talking about Metroid Prime today, right, Tyler?
That's right, Metroid Prime, my favorite Metroid game by far, no contest, Metroid Prime.
Is that a hot take, or is that just a take that a lot of people have? Not to say you're not special, but this is a popular Metroid game, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a hot take. I don't think it's a cold take either. I think it's like a very tepid take.
It's a tepid takes here.
It's one of those, like, somebody says, oh yeah, my favorite Metroid game is Metroid Prime. You go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You know?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good opinion. It's a strong opinion.
It's like saying, my favorite Batman movie is the Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan, Dark Knight. And people go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, sure. Some people will maybe like 1989 Batman. Some people maybe like, well, one person probably likes Batman Forever. But it's not exactly a hot take, you know?
It's not as hot as your Lego Batman take, tell you that much.
Which is the actual truth. The best Batman movie is Lego Batman, and I will take that to the grave.
Tyler will die on that Lego hill.
I will die on that hill.
Right.
Not to say that those other Batman movies aren't great, but Lego Batman is the best.
Mm-hmm. It's worth a Google. Okay.
Worth a Google. Okay, so in our last episode of our Metroid series, not Codex History of Batman Movies, we covered Super Metroid. So, like I said, for many, Super Metroid is the Metroid game for them. Like, if somebody were to say Super Metroid is my favorite Metroid, that's also not a hot take. That's a very tepid take, very common, because it's a great game. Because they had taken everything great about the original game, they combined it with some of the innovations that the Game Boy sequel had brought, and they cranked up the graphics and the music to 11 with the power of the Super Nintendo. It was a true masterpiece of gaming, and if you haven't checked it out, you really should. And like I said, for many, this was their Metroid game. But it's not my Metroid game. This is the game that made me fall in love with the Metroid series in 2002, Metroid Prime. It was a stark departure from Super Metroid, which had been released 8 long years before. So there was a long time between Metroid games here. The franchise had totally skipped the Nintendo 64, only briefly showing us what Samus could look like in 3D with the original Super Smash Bros. Game. So they sort of kept the dream alive there, but didn't really do anything with it. So fans were hungry for more Metroid, and what they got was awesome. And like I said, it's my favorite Metroid game for sure. It's probably also my favorite GameCube game. Not everybody thought that it was going to be great when they first started talking about it, when they said, we're going to make it a first-person shooter or a first-person game. A lot of fans were like, what? That's not what Metroid is. Well, turned out to be okay. Let's dive into the grind facts here.
That is a risky choice, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very risky.
That was a hot take right there to say, you know what would make a great first-person shooter? Metroid. Because they could have done it poorly. I mean, Castlevania on the Nintendo 64 went to 3D, and not great. Not great.
We're going to get to that soon, and I'm excited to talk about that dumpster fire. Okay.
Oh, man. That should also be... We should do a series of dumpster fire games like Castlevania 64, Superman 64, Daikatana. A lot of Nintendo 64 games would be on that list.
There was a recommendation on Discord. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look up the name right now. I'm sorry this is taking so long, but this is just right off the cuff. It was the top 10 worst games on Metacritic. I believe it was Alexa that said this. I could be wrong. This is going off the top of my head, and of course I can't find it right now. But that is a great idea to do.
Yeah, just true dumpster fires.
Yeah, the truly the worst games of all
Duke
time.
Nukem Forever, and I guess there needs to be some stipulations there of like worst game of all time. Like there's a lot of bad games, just like there's a lot of bad movies. That doesn't make them all worth playing and talking about in a worst game of all time list. So you need something that like had high hopes, high expectations, and just did not deliver. You know?
Yeah. Oh, it was Alexa. That was a great idea. Thank you, Alexa, for that idea. So
we should do that.
We definitely should do something like that at some point. I think that'd be a great episode. But yeah, I can't wait to get to Castlevania 64. We are going to take a brief Castlevania break after the next one because we're doing Symphony of the Night next, and I know that's one that everyone's been hankering for. And then I'm going to take a break from it so we can move on to some other fun stuff I have planned. But okay, let's keep going with Metroid. Grime facts.
Yeah, let's talk about the grime facts. The developer of Metroid Prime was a company called Retro Studios, So not Nintendo, but we'll get to their connection to Nintendo and how they got started in a minute. It was, of course, published by Nintendo. The genre is a first-person action-adventure. A lot of people want to say it's a first-person shooter, and by a very broad definition, it is a first-person shooter. But I don't think it fits very cleanly into that mold because the shooting is really a secondary part of it. There's not it's got like a lock-on system similar to Ocarina of Time, so aiming is not that important in the game as just choosing the right target. So it's hard. I don't like saying it's a first-person shooter like it's a Halo game or something like that. It's definitely very different. It released on the Nintendo GameCube in November of 2002 in North America, and then a little bit later in 2003 and 2002 around the world, including Japan, because Retro Studios is an American developer.
Interesting.
Located in Texas. Yeah. It sold 2 million copies, more than 2 million copies. It got a lot of Game of the Year awards, including IGN's Editor's Choice Award. It was runner-up Game of the Year for IGN in 2002 because Battlefield 1942 just took the cake for them because I guess they really love that game.
It's a hard game to compete with. Yeah. Battlefield 1942 is a very good game.
Yep. But it was GameSpot's Game of the Year. It was GameSpy's Game of the Year. Remember GameSpy?
Oh, I remember GameSpy. I miss you, GameSpy.
I know. And when they ran a whole bunch of online servers, especially for the Wii, like the Wii's like whole online system was built on GameSpy servers. And so when GameSpy went down, that's why they had to shut off the Wii. Yeah. But anyway, the game did well. Metroid Prime won a lot of awards. Everybody loved it. It takes about 14 hours to beat on howlongtobeat.com, which is pretty long for a Metroid game because I feel like the other ones we've looked at have been 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and this one is like 15, so 3 times as long as the longest older Metroid game, which is pretty cool. And of course, I think there are multiple endings for speedrunning it. Maybe not. I think maybe it's just based on item completion. But the Metacritic score for Metroid Prime, 97 out of 100. Well-deserved. Hats off.
That is very high for Metacritic.
Yeah.
There can't be one person that just hates Metroid that was going to give it a bad score as an outlier. That's crazy. That it got a 97
I know.
out
Like
of
the
100.
outliers are like, well, it didn't make me breakfast in the morning, so here's a 95.
A 90, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the development a little bit here of Metroid Prime. After the release of Super Metroid, gamers were clamoring for another entry into the bounty hunter Samus Aran's saga. It was a huge hit, and I've said it a million times, but I will keep saying it. Super Metroid is one of the very best Super Nintendo games. So would Nintendo make a sequel? Not exactly, and not right away either, because when the Nintendo 64 came out, which seemed like the perfect time to put another entry in the series, bring it into the modern 3D era like they'd done with Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time and Bomberman, and, well, Bomberman was a bad example. That was not a good game. That's an example of a game that I would later learn was bad, even though I loved it growing up, Bomberman 64.
I never played it, and I always wanted to play it, and then I've heard from multiple friends now that it is terrible.
Nope, it's truly awful, but I loved it because when you're 8 years old, you can't not love a thing.
You just like to watch things blow up. You know?
Yep. But anyway, they didn't put a game out on the Nintendo 64. They teased a few times that like something was coming, that they'd sort of been working on it, but Miyamoto eventually admitted that they really just didn't have any good ideas for doing Metroid in 3D, which, you know, I guess if you can't do it, you can't do it. You know, don't put out a bad game just because you knew it would sell. That's what Sega did with Sonic games during this time, and they were all bad. Even the ones that I remember as being good, like the Sonic Adventure series, also bad.
Those
so
are
don't do what
bad
Sega
adventures.
did.
Yep.
Sega, gosh, they did not put out very many good Sonic games. Like I'm thinking, Sonic and Knuckles in 1994, and then what was the next good Sonic game?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, Sega had a very strange fall.
Yeah.
You know, because they're just out of consoles, but they're still alive. It's just weird. Are they owned by anyone?
No, they do have a lot of good franchises right now. They've got, I want to say they own, do they own Yakuza? The Yakuza franchise?
Oh, I mean, that would be huge if they did. We kind of talked about Sega's early days, and I'm realizing now we never really talked about where they are now. Although we don't really get to do that a lot on this podcast, is the where are they now segment, you know?
Yeah.
What's going on with that studio? Because usually a lot of the studios we talked about in the Ultimate History of Video Game book club days were very much like, and they closed 20 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to do a where they at now, how they doing now. So, yeah, because Sega's got, they have Valkyria Chronicles. They have Yakuza, Phantasy Star Online
so
2 is an
great.
MMO that they do.
They're just not making consoles anymore, but they're doing great.
Yeah, they're still making games, I suppose. And they're selling well. They're just not, they're not what they used to be.
Don't they have like a bunch of arcade games that you find at Dave & Buster's too?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get that sweet Dave & Buster's chicken wing money, you know?
Yeah. So maybe if Nintendo had put out a Metroid game on the Nintendo 64, they too could be getting that sweet Dave & Buster's chicken tender money.
We all dream of the chicken tender money. That's what we all dream about.
That's what we all dream of. But they didn't do that. They didn't put a game out on the N64, which was a bummer for Metroid fans. So in 1998, Jeff Spangenberg, formerly of Iguana Entertainment. That's
a very fun name.
Spangenberg?
I think Spangenberg is
Yeah.
I hope it's right because it's fun to say.
Yep. Francisco. Formerly, so Jeff Spangenberg was from Iguana Entertainment. They developed the Turok franchise and NBA Jam and my personal favorite basketball game on the Super Nintendo, College Slam.
I am putting Turok on our list right now because oh man, what a game I dreamed of as a kid but never owned and loved.
Yeah. So he left Iguana Entertainment and he joined forces with Nintendo to start a new studio that would focus on creating games that were aimed at a more mature adult audience because Nintendo was starting to get their strategy together for what would become the GameCube, and they were starting to realize, hey, these kids that played our games in the 80s are growing up and we should grow up with them. So let's have a little bit of some darker, more mature games, such as a Metroid game would be perfect for that. But they didn't start out doing that right away. The studio pursued a few different paths for games. They had like a third-person adventure game, and they had like a sports game, I think, and they had an RPG they were working on. But after Miyamoto visited the studio, which is in Texas, and he really liked the stuff that they were putting together for the third-person action-adventure game, he suggested that they take the beloved Metroid franchise and do him proud by making a new game. Which is, man, imagine having Miyamoto come to visit your development place. You're working on 3 or 4, like, whatever games that, like, you'll see which one kind of gets the most traction and that you can keep working on, you know? And Miyamoto's coming out, and you're probably super nervous. You're like, oh, man, this is like grandfather of video gaming coming to tell me if my stuff is good or not. And he likes what you're doing so much. He says, hey, this franchise that I couldn't make anything happen with for the past, like, 8 years, you want to give it a try?
Whoa. It's like dreams come true, you know?
I know.
How do you go to bed that night? You know? How do you sleep? Oh, man. If I get if I find $10 in my pocket, I can't sleep at night. And this, like, you got
You'd be up for weeks if Miyamoto asked you to make a Metroid game.
It would be no sleep until Metroid.
Yeah,
that famous Beastie Boys song.
So originally, they had planned to make it a third-person adventure game, which had kind of worked for Mario and Zelda. Why wouldn't it work for Metroid? I think that's the first thing that anybody jumps to when they say, well, how would you do Metroid in 3D? You think, well, let's take the 2D and just, like, turn it forwards, you know, like a Crash Bandicoot, and then sort of make it a larger world. So that was the plan for a while, is they were going to make it a third-person action-adventure game. But Miyamoto came back, he intervened, and he had them scrap most of the work they'd already done, and they had them turn it into a first-person game. So that was Miyamoto's idea, was to make it first-person. And the reason he chose that was because he thought it made exploration easier, and he also was trying to learn from Rare's mistakes, because they had made a game called Jet Force Gemini, which we haven't covered Rare before, have we?
Wow, that is a game blast from the past. I haven't heard the phrase Jet Force Gemini in a long time, but wow, yeah.
We should probably do an episode on Rare or a series on Rare, because Jet Force Gemini is one of their rare faults in a game that came out that was like, maybe this one's not so great. At least during the Nintendo 64 era, when it seemed like everything they put out was solid gold, from GoldenEye to Banjo-Kazooie to even Donkey Kong 64 wasn't that bad, all right? Fight me.
But yeah, I think Rare is on our list and was recommended by a listener on Discord. So that's definitely on our radar for sure.
Okay, we should definitely do that. But anyway, they made a game called Jet Force Gemini, which was kind of a third-person action-adventure game, but it had a whole bunch of camera problems, and Miyamoto thought the controls weren't very intuitive. So he was like, you know what? Scrap this third-person idea. Cameras are too hard. Let's make Metroid a first-person game. So they shifted the whole thing to first-person. But like I said earlier, I think it's a bit inaccurate to say that it's a first-person shooter because it's not like a Halo going in, blasting bad guys and getting to the end of the level. Like, while you do shoot things and it is first-person shooter, I think it's more accurately described as a first-person adventure game, which is what Nintendo also described it as. Because there's, like I said, there's that lock-on system for aiming, so there's no like skill in aiming, which I think is very important to the genre of first-person shooter. Of like, that's a skill that we're testing for in those games, and there just aren't in Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime instead wants you to focus on exploration and solving puzzles. And the director of the game actually purposefully wanted to make only the boss fights be the hard parts of the game, so that the player wouldn't be afraid to explore and see what's further into the world. This isn't a like you'll die immediately if you make a mistake kind of game. It's you'll get stung and you'll back off and you'll like sort of think about where you're going, but you won't be afraid to move forward because, oh no, what if I die, right? Which I think is really, really cool. It's struck like a really perfect balance, I think, between cerebral exploration and puzzle solving, and then the action-oriented sort of twitch gameplay of the boss fights, which was just awesome. Because when a boss fight came up, that's when you knew you needed to be in like that's when you like sit up in your chair, when you're sitting back.
Oh, yeah.
And then you die or something serious happens, and you're like, oh, I got to sit up, and you like change your position as if that makes any difference at all. But yeah, it's just great. So the team crunched for nearly 2.5 years to get Metroid Prime out the door on November 17th in 2002, which is almost 20 years ago now. Wow. I
Yikes.
am old.
Yeah, we got to stop saying the dates of video games on here because it's getting depressing.
Yeah. But they did it, and that's why it came out in a little bit in Japan, because it was made by an American studio called RoccoW, which Nintendo does own RoccoW, or at least enough of them that they were considered a first-party developer. Even if they were somewhat independent, they were basically a Nintendo studio. So that's kind of the development of Metroid Prime. Let's jump a little bit into the storyline of Metroid here. So despite coming out about 8 years since the last entry in the series, Metroid Prime, and in fact the entire Prime trilogy, so Prime 1, 2, and 3, takes place in between Metroid and Metroid 2, The Return of Samus.
Wow, I didn't know there was that much time between those two games.
Yeah. I sort of was under the impression that Samus basically flew from the first Metroid game to SR388 in the second Metroid game, but apparently she had a whole series of adventures in between, gaining and losing all of her powers over and over again. So I don't know.
But sometimes you got to do stuff where you gain and lose powers. You got a lot of errands to run in between. We've all been there.
A lot of Samus errands to run.
Oh man, those are the kind of jokes that we get bad reviews for. I'm here for it.
If you're not here for that, then that's fine. You can leave.
You have no business being here.
Yeah. This is a core part of our podcast. Anyway, the story of Metroid Prime starts with Samus getting a distress signal from a space pilot frigate called the Orpheon. So naturally, she goes to check it out. Although I don't really know why, because I think she knows it's a space pirate frigate, and she just goes anyway. Like, wouldn't she just want to watch the space pirates burn? I don't know. Anyway, she makes her way.
Too kind-hearted for that.
She's what?
Too kind-hearted for that.
I guess she'll save even some space pirates that are in trouble, I suppose. So she makes her way through the frigate. You learn how to use all of your abilities there. It's pretty cool. It's a nice, like, feels like high stakes tutorial. That's really fun. She fights the Parasite Queen, which is a really, really cool first boss fight that I just love. And it makes you like when that's the first boss, you play this game and you go, oh man, I'm in for a real treat here, because that could have been a final boss in any other game. Just the scale of it and how big it feels, So anyway, she defeats the Parasite Queen, and on her way out of the ship, she sees Ridley from the first few Metroid games. She chases him down, some stuff happens, and of course, Samus loses all of her powers on her way out. She manages to escape the frigate, chase Ridley down to the surface of a planet called Talon 4. And while she's down there, she finds the ruins of a Chozo civilization, which is crazy because she was raised by Chozo. It's like an ancient sort of bird, like race of bird people. So she finds the ruins down there, but what happened to them? Where are they now? Such mysteries. Samus makes her way around the planet, gaining her abilities back, discovering the Chozo went extinct after a crazy meteor crashed into the planet. Spoilers. There's a big old Metroid she's got to beat, and she's got to beat Meta Ridley. and it's super crazy. I don't want to get too spoilery with it, but Samus
game
does
sounds
win
fun.
in the end. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's
I would
great.
hope Samus wins in the end. That's what we're
Yeah.
all hoping for.
She wins in the end, and by the time you get to the end, you have a really cool-looking black suit called the Phazon suit, which keeps you from taking the radioactivity of Phazon stuff. But when she beats Metroid Prime, because spoilers, she does beat the Metroid Prime. The Metroid takes that suit from her, takes the Phazon part of it, and leaves her with just her regular old gravity suit. If you get the best 100% ending, you get a little secret scene of Metroid Prime reconstructing itself as a replica of Samus with that suit, which is foreshadowing will be very important in Metroid Prime 2. But anyway, that's kind of a synopsis of the Metroid game. Most of your time is spent on Talon 4, figuring out what happened to the Chozo, seeing how that interacts with the impact crater that you have to go down into. Once you're in the impact crater, you got to fight a Metroid Prime. There's a lot of Metroids down there. It's very scary, and it's very radioactive, and it's awesome.
That sounds really fun. I actually have a copy of this game now when I got that giant dump of video games from a friend that moved away. So I need to see if I have the right TV plugins to play this on my GameCube.
Yeah. Do you have a Wii?
I do have a Wii also. Yeah.
You should play it on your Wii, and you should get the component cables for your Wii so you can get a little bit of a better picture. The component cables for a GameCube are like $100 or something. They're ridiculous. But component cables for a Wii are not expensive.
I think I have the component cables for. I might. Let me look. I don't know. I have a bunch of extra stuff that I need to go through still. So yeah, I definitely want to play this game. It's on my list of games I need to play.
It's super great.
Yeah, I'm excited. So many recommendations.
I'll talk a little bit about the gameplay of Metroid Prime, which we've touched a little bit on, but it's very cool. It's so different and yet so similar to its predecessors. Like when you look at a screenshot of Metroid Prime and a screenshot of Super Metroid, you go, these are totally different, completely different games. Nothing of what you know from one game will transfer into the other. But you will find out as you get further and further into Metroid Prime that they are very similar to its predecessors. Because it's more of like an adventure game than it is a first-person shooter. There's a lot of platforming in this game, even more first-person jumping puzzles than Destiny, I'd say.
I do love a jumping puzzle. Let me tell you that much.
A lot of jumping puzzles in this game, and it feels pretty good too. Like a lot of times, first-person platforming can be tough, but I think it feels pretty good in Metroid Prime. There's a lot of exploration in the game to find energy tanks, missile upgrades, other power-ups. There's also a lot of backtracking. That's the big Metroid thing of like, you get to an area, you see that you don't have the thing you need to progress in this area, so you leave, you find that thing elsewhere in the game, and when you get it, you go, oh yeah, there was that spot before that I couldn't get past. You go back there, now you can get past it, and that's like the sort of primary way of making progress in a game is getting an upgrade and going, oh yeah, now I can go back to this other place where I know I need to use this upgrade, which is a big time, that's big of what Super Metroid is, and Metroid Prime nails that feeling perfectly. And it makes getting upgrades like really fun, really satisfying, which is great. Samus has 4 different weapons. She's got a regular charge beam, she's got an ice beam, a wave beam, plasma beam. She gets them all at different points in the game. You don't get them right off the bat. They all have their uses. They all do slightly different things. But new to the franchise is the visor system. So by hitting directions on the D-pad, Samus has a choice between her regular combat visor, a scanning visor that tells her about items, enemies, and ancient ruins that she finds. Lots of text to read in this game after you scan stuff. And that's part of getting the 100% completion is scanning everything and getting all the entries in the, maybe it's called a codex? I don't know.
I mean,
but getting all the
sense.
entries into her thing, yeah. She's also got an X-ray visor for seeing spooky ghosts.
There's ghosts in this game?
Yeah, it gets real spooky sometimes. Spooky ghosts
man.
you need an X-ray visor for. And then a thermal visor, which is exactly what it sounds like. Lets you see the heat signatures of stuff. So they're all really useful. They're all necessary in their own ways. And I think the X-ray visor and the thermal visor show off some cool graphic effects that the GameCube could do that might not have been possible in Nintendo 64. So the combat feels really good, mostly because of that lock-on targeting feature. So, like, if you're here for an FPS experience to test your aim and reflexes, this ain't it, Chief. Metroid Prime is not for you. But Metroid offers its own challenge in choosing how to engage with enemies, and the boss fights are all pretty fun, and they all have some unique mechanics to them, which is pretty neat. Most of the upgrades in this game are from the older games. either a direct port or equivalent. You got your charge beam, your morph ball bomb, spider ball, Varia suit, gravity suit, super missiles. Each beam has its own version of super missiles to get as well, which is kind of cool. There's a lot of I guess those are new to this game, like the multiple kinds of super missiles is pretty cool. But mostly the new stuff that this game adds is the visor system, which makes sense because it's a first-person game. So I think it's nice that they don't get too many new things in here, because that really helps people who played older Metroid games to anchor on to what they need to be doing in 3D. They don't have to think about the uses of those things that they've already used in older games before. They can just focus on adapting how their thought process of how those things work into 3D, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. I mean, it's got to be weird that going from a series that you would play as a platformer in 2D to now a 3D. So, and if they can make a way for it to be the change as comfortable as possible, you know?
Yeah. And I don't think anybody was complaining of like, oh, they're just reusing power-ups from the old games. Like, yeah, they are, but they're taking them into 3D. Like, you're not just doing the same stuff with them. It's like all different, you know?
It's all new.
Yeah, it's all new, but it's also very comfortable because you know what these items are capable of. I think it's like a perfect way to bring a game into the modern era and like away from 2D side scrollers and into like a 3D shooting game. Yeah. Also comforting for returning players is the music. Oh, Metroid Prime's music. It was composed by Kenji Yamamoto, and it has a bunch of remixes of songs from previous games. So the Talon Overworld theme is phenomenal. The Magmore Caverns is like a lava zone, where it's like a fun remix of a Super Metroid song. There's the Phendrana Drifts, which is like an ice area, snowy, Hoth-like area that has a song that plays that's just so good. Oh, gosh, I love this game. Everything about it. I might need to just go play it after we're done talking here, because the music is just, it nails the feeling of loneliness that permeates all Metroid games. And I guess I'm biased because it's my favorite Metroid game, but I think Metroid Prime nails the atmosphere better than any other Metroid game does. It's so lonely, so isolated. You see Samus fly towards the planet at the beginning of the game, and there's just no one else there. And in fact, that's like the mystery that you're trying to solve, is like, why am I the only one here, basically? Because there was a whole civilization that's just gone.
Samus goes to the planet. Why am I so lonely all the time in every game?
Every game, it's just me. So the scanning visor will tell you everything you need to know about your enemies, and it also translates ancient Chozo texts so that you can know what the heck just happened here. It's great. Like I said, play this game.
You've got me amped for it too. Like, I feel like I really need to go get my get the Wii version off, because it's just the same disc for GameCube works on a Wii essentially.
Yeah, there is a Wii version of the game. You could buy the Metroid Prime trilogy, and it's got widescreen and it has Wii remote controls, which is pretty cool. I think it works really well. So if you have a way to play the Wii version of the trilogy, like, that's the better way to play. But if you just have a GameCube disc, you can pop it in. That's fine too.
Okay, I might do that. I just have the GameCube disc. I'm not trying to spend any real life money here, you know?
Yeah, no. Don't spend any money dollars. Okay, so we get to the last part of our Metroid Prime talk, where I talk about the legacy of this game. What did it leave behind? And like I said a lot today, but this game is super, super special to me. So I'll talk a little bit about my personal experience with it. I picked it up in like the winter of 2003, so probably a year after it had already been out. But this was before the second one had come out. I was 13 years old, and I distinctly remember playing this game during winter break, like a lot, because I didn't have a guide, so I had to figure it all out for myself. And this was 2003, so like the internet existed, and I had access to the internet in the terms of like dial-up, right? So you could get guides online, but they were text only. They loaded super slow. So a lot of this game I just had to figure it out for myself because the internet was too much of a hassle to use. I did end up eventually buying a guide to the game from a bookstore, because that was the only way to get pictures of things. Because even if you could find a guide online in 2003, you were not going to find pictures. No capture cards, no digital cameras. I mean, digital cameras existed, but nobody was using them. Nobody's uploading these pictures so you can download them at like 2.5 kilobytes per second. So yeah, get off my lawn. I'm an old man, I guess.
You're making me feel like fuzzy nostalgia here, where I would go to like a used bookstore and hope they had a guide of the video game I was playing, and they never did, you know?
Yeah, and you just sit. I've done that, where you just sit in the bookstore and like, while like mom is off doing something else in the bookstore, I'd just like read through the guide of the game that I needed help with. I didn't buy the guide, but I just sit there and read it so that I knew what to do next. And then at one point they started like sealing them in plastic, and you couldn't do that anymore.
Now they're just like, they don't care because they're so few and far between. Like you go to a bookstore and they're like wedged in between like the comics and the manga somewhere, like or like mixed into it, and it's just like, go find it.
Yeah. Do they even still make printed guides for new games?
They do, but they're
really?
few and
like,
far
what am I going to buy? A
between.
Witcher 3 guide?
Yeah, I mean,
that stuff's all over the internet.
That's the one, like Witcher 3. I saw a Skyrim guide at a bookstore still. So, like, I mean, that could obviously be like 10 years old because that game's
old now. Oh,
but
my
I'm
goodness. Skyrim 10 years old? I remember being excited for that game as a grown man. Wow.
Oh, that's how I know, like, because I'm 10 years into stand-up comedy, and that was 10 years. Like, the first year, people were excited about Skyrim. Like, I remember that distinctly.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh, that game is so old now, and I'm old too.
Yeah. Oh man, and it's come out on everything.
Yeah.
Since. It's just
it'll have like 800 re-releases more, I'm sure, before they finally stop.
Yeah. Well, the only way they stop is when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, and even then they'll still keep putting Skyrim out, I bet.
Oh yeah, it's just a money printing machine.
Yep. Well, back to Metroid anyway. I think Metroid Prime's art style also really sticks out to me as being something I remember. Like, this wasn't the first time I'd been like wowed by graphics in the past, but I think I played Metroid Prime right at the point in my life where I was finally able to truly appreciate graphics, because not only were they super, super realistic, but I could start to appreciate the work that went into them as well, because I was just getting older and starting to become more cognizant of that kind of stuff. But the game's graphics, they looked so good. They looked like real life to me. And it's a lot of like small detail touches, like the volume level of the music as you explore. That's part of the atmosphere, not part of the graphics, obviously. But the way you can hear Samus wince when she takes a shot from an enemy, or how her face reflects on the visor in certain circumstances. Like if a bright light flashes in front of you, you'll see her face on the inside of the visor. And the rain, when you first land on Talon 4, you come into a kind of overcast, like overgrown, rainy area, a lot like the Pacific Northwest, but with aliens. Mm-hmm. So it's like super rainy, and if you look up, you see the droplets landing on Samus's visor. And I know that's like a thing the games do now that's like not new, but in 2002, like this is the early 2000s, this absolutely blew my mind. I was like, this game is so realistic. And I think it's still like, it still holds up. Like it's one of those rare games that went for a realistic sort of aesthetic that still holds up and doesn't just look like trash today. And I think that's because of the amount of detail that went into it. Like the textures themselves don't look that great because they're low res, but there's a lot of just the world feels so handcrafted that I think just really, really makes it feel good to play through again today, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I really want to play this now. You're getting me all amped up for it.
Oh, man. Super Metroid Prime. Super Metroid Prime would be the best.
That would be the best video game ever made.
Yeah. But they like, because they took that same great gameplay loop that Super Metroid did so well, and they perfectly translated it to a first-person game. Game's got that great lonely atmosphere that all of the Metroid games up to this point had. And I think Metroid Prime 2 does a really good job of that atmosphere as well. But Metroid Prime 3 kind of drops the ball. There's like some weird, like, oh, you're part of the Federation, and there's like dialogue and stuff, which is kind of weird. And then Other M is like, I don't know. We'll get there, I guess. I should play that. Right? That game came out in 2009, so we'll get there.
Yeah, that's fair game, I think. I mean, the only thing you couldn't cover is there is a new Metroid for Switch coming out, right? A Metroid Prime 4?
Yeah. That's exciting.
That unfortunately we would not be able to cover because that's going to be so recent.
It's too new.
Yeah. I'm wondering if for Metroid Prime 4 they would consider an HD remake of Metroid Prime for Switch.
Oh, they better.
That would be the ideal way for me to play this game, just because I think it would make it easier, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm obviously want to try to play it on the old way it was intended, but gosh, I would really like this game to be remade. If Nintendo's going to keep doing this, and I know people get upset about it because you're paying more money for a game you've already played, but I never played it, so I'm fine with it.
Well, hey, if you're unhappy with paying money for a game you've already played, then just don't buy it.
Yeah, there you go. So... Gosh, so amped to look into this now, Tyler. And I'm going to listen to the music too. We want to put you should put the music on the Discord.
So it's so good.
together with headphones on in total silence on the voice channel.
So anyway, all this like podcast is just a giant love letter to Metroid Prime because I loved it. They took an acclaimed series, they gave it a great makeover after an 8-year hiatus, and it became my favorite game on the GameCube. And so if you love Metroid and you have not played this game, you need to play this game. Even if you're not really a Metroid fan, I think you should play this game. I think the best way to play it is the Wii re-release that we just talked about because it's widescreen, which I think is a big deal now. It's really hard for me to play games that are not widescreen anymore.
Dude, watching Justice League, the remake in the 4:3 format, was weird on a widescreen TV.
That was a weird choice they made.
I watched it still, but I was like, that's really weird. And I can't only imagine a game like that.
Yeah. You just feel like there's so much of your TV that's just not being used.
Yeah.
So,
it's like there's just a lot of real estate here.
Yeah. I mean, you can stretch it, I guess, but you're not really gaining anything by doing that. You're just distorting the picture.
Yeah, it just gets a little weird.
So the Wii re-release has widescreen support, crucially, but also the controls are changed to use a bit more of the Wii pointer. Still has the lock-on system, but the pointer is there as well. It's just cool. It kind of makes it a little bit, the few parts where you do need to do some free looking, it's a lot easier to do with a Wii remote. If you can get this game running in an emulator, playing it at 4K is really great. Looks awesome. And there is also a project in progress right now to reverse engineer and port Metroid Prime to the PC, kind of like how that group of hackers did. Maybe not hackers isn't the right word, but that group of software engineers remade Super Mario 64, and then now it's like has native ports to PC and all kinds of platforms. Metroid is getting something like that.
That's really cool. I didn't even know that about 64, Super Mario 64.
Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy ride because they've like successfully reverse engineered the whole thing. You still need to have a copy of the ROM to run the game because obviously the art is all copyright, but the code is not, and it is a perfect replication, I guess, of the N64 game. And then of course now that they have the source code to that, they can port it to everything, which is pretty neat. So anyway, the Metroid Prime port isn't done yet, so you can go Googling for that if you want to, but you won't find anything too useful just yet. But 2002 didn't see just one Metroid game. Metroid Prime succeeded in taking the formula and revolutionizing it into a familiar yet distinctly different experience, but some players still wanted something else. They didn't want Metroid Prime. They wanted a true Super Metroid sequel, something worthy of the name Metroid 4. Well, that same year, Nintendo released Metroid Fusion, which was a portable, traditional 2D adventure with Samus Aran. It's also great, and we will cover that on a future episode of Codex, so I don't mean to get you all excited for that, but I do want to make sure we give it its due and give it a whole episode. So
look at that cliffhanger. Great job, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks. What have you been playing, Mike?
Well, you and I just drop-kicked Halo 5 this week. What was that?
Really
like
did. We
3
crushed
sessions,
Yep.
not even 2 hours each, and we beat it. We just like flew through that game. So we're done with all the Halos now, including Halo Wars. We really did it up. We really showed
we
Master
played all
Chief.
the Halo Wars. We played every Halo game.
Yeah, so we did that, and then I've been playing a lot of Destiny this week, which is weird because I was playing Iron Banner yesterday, realizing I wasn't enjoying it, and then just kept playing it anyway as like a time killer, I think, and it was fine. It was just that game is broken, especially on the PvP side with the whole stasis, because it's like you try to do something and then someone just freezes you, and you're like, oh, okay,
Cool.
I can break free of this by holding the V key, but I don't live that long, so it's over.
Yeah.
And then I also started this week because they put it on Game Pass, and I actually had started it previously and forgot, but Wolfenstein: The New Order, and I'm about halfway through that game right now. So, and that's just something I'm playing for fun in my free time, grabbing all the collectibles because why not? And it's pretty enjoyable, and I'm digging it. So
Nice.
I've been playing that. What did you been playing?
Well, like I said, we kicked the crap out of Halo 5. I'm still cranking through Persona 5 Strikers, still loving it, still great. I haven't put as much time into it as I would have liked, because I get caught into like watching YouTube just for like a long time when I should be playing a game probably and learning nothing. So Persona 5 Strikers. I also fired up the Tetris Effect this week because it's on Game Pass. And it is literally if the people who made Luminous for the PSP made a Tetris game, because that's what it is. It's those people, they made a Tetris game, and it's like, it's a trip. Like, it's just very musically oriented. It's Tetris puzzle solving with a musical twist to it that makes it really, really fun to play and get really sucked into. So I played a little bit of that. I also played a little bit more Destiny the other night, just trying to get through the campaign of Beyond Light, because I do want to do some of the fun stuff that they have planned. I just haven't been able to justify the time to like grind it out. But I played some last night, and I'll probably play a little bit more as the weekend progresses.
Yeah, I guess I should preface that by saying I have been playing the week by week story content of Destiny for this season. It's very good. Like, I like what they do with the story stuff. It's just I really don't care about anything else at this point, is how I kind of feel. I'm like, raids, sure, I guess, when we get to that point. Iron Banner, whatever. I'm never playing Trials of Osiris. I just don't. It just, yeah, for me, it's all about the seasonal story content. And if I play that for 2 hours a week, I'm happy with the money I've spent for that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yep. Cool. Well, I would like to get to that point where I can at least play those things with you. So
yeah, we could play the story things together. It'd be really fun. But hey, wait. So then, what is your YouTube rabbit hole? Because I went down a YouTube rabbit hole last night.
Oh, I mean, I sometimes I just get sucked into watching my recommendations, and so there's a wide variety of stuff.
Oh yeah, I do that too.
But I watch a lot of tech videos. Not so much for the content. Like, I just really appreciate a well-produced tech video, like the stuff that The Verge makes or MKBHD. Like, I don't necessarily care about their opinions that much on tech stuff, but I just really appreciate like a high production quality video. So yeah, I don't know if I got sucked into like a specific YouTube rabbit hole. I do a lot of, I watch a lot of videos of people playing covers of songs in genres that they aren't. Like punk songs in a country format or the other way around is really fun.
Oh yeah, you got me into those. I'm a big fan of that.
That stuff is really fun. And then the rabbit hole I did get sucked into a little while ago is a channel called Soft White Underbelly, and it's basically a guy who just interviews people like homeless people, drug users, people that he finds kind of on the street in whatever town he's in. A lot of it's in Los Angeles, and these people have a lot of really interesting things to say. And some of them are really long, some of them are really short, but they're really good interviews, and I enjoy watching them.
Nice. I went down mine was a D&D, like a guy explains D&D in a funny way. It's called Runesmith is the channel, and he does like basically, and then a D&D enemy type or race or boss or whatever. And they're just really funny. And I watched that for like 3 to 4 hours last night. I just went through his whole catalog just over and over again while just doing nothing. I should have been playing games last night, or more importantly, working on my coding homework, and I just didn't do it. But yeah, you got to love that. When you're in the mood for a good YouTube rabbit hole, they're there.
Yep.
And that's what's important.
Oh, yeah.
But we got a lot of emails to go through still. So you want to start doing those?
Sure.
All right, I'll read this first one from Mark.
Okay.
Mark says, "Hiya, Tyler and Mike. First, I'm really flattered that you took up my suggestion of doing a series on Metroidvania games, and it's been a lot of fun to listen to. Anyways, I saw this article today about the various Game Boy competitors that never quite caught on. You've covered a number of them in previous episodes, but there are some interesting hidden gems here. I think my personal favorite was to learn about the light game system. All the best, Mark and Mark." It's funny that you mentioned that, because the weird idea I have is related to handhelds in a very obscure way, and we're going to jump into that when I am done with Castlevania next week. But I really dig this article. He sent us a really good article from the AV Club that it's called The Games. Here, how does let me read the game.com cometh the rise and fall of the Game Boy's weirdest rivals. And it's a very interesting article, and I'll probably post it on the Discord. But yeah, thank you so much for the idea, Mark. And I will be sharing this, and I will be probably using it in the future, because I kind of want to jump into these really obscure consoles that we haven't really covered yet, because I think they're fun to talk about. So
I agree.
Do you want to read
We'd
the
love
next?
to hear more.
Yeah, the next email from
Yeah,
Burger
we
Champ.
got one from Burger Champ here. He says, "I have a tendency to consume media at all times. I have a daily podcast listening schedule, and I'm currently listening to my 51st book of the year. All possible therapy sessions aside, I listen to podcasts and books while playing video games frequently. Is there any piece of non-gaming media, song, book, podcast, TV show, or movie that you associate with a game or section of a specific game? For me, the cruise ship dungeon in Persona 5, which is tied for my least favorite dungeon with the casino, will always be linked with Trevor Noah's Born a Crime because I listened to it while I played. And The Witness will always be inextricably linked with my first listen of the Worst Idea of All Time podcast. What are yours? Have a safe and happy Games Day, and whenever we have Codex Con, spider butts are on me, Burger Champ. I'll hold you to that, Burger Champ. Spider butts on you.
Oh man, we gotta figure out what sort of weird concession a spider butt is.
Yeah,
you know? Or if it's a drink. I don't know. I listen to podcasts a lot when I play Destiny 2 because it really works well with just grindy games. I feel like, and I love the podcasts. Well, there's 3 that come to mind, and they're all D&D podcasts. There's Nerd Poker, there's The Adventure Zone, and then there's Rude Tales of Magic. And I listen to all of those in like weekly when I play Destiny 2. So I definitely associate those I don't listen to them when I have free time, so I could be like, I'm going to listen to that later when I play Destiny 2. So that's kind of what I associate. What about you?
I have a few different things here. So most of mine are very recent, but I have a really old throwback too. So the first couple here, a couple years ago when Battle for Azeroth came out, one night I was playing for like several hours straight by myself. I was just in like a real WoW mood. And I got the bug in me that I wanted to listen to some Paramore music, which I had never really been a fan of in the past. But for some reason, I was like, you know what? I want to listen to a whole bunch of Paramore tonight. So I found their like Essentials playlist, and I probably listened to it through like 3 or 4 times on Apple Music while playing WoW. And so now whenever I walk through the battleground, I think that it was that I was doing for some of that, like I just think of all those Paramore songs that I listened to. A lot of them I was hearing for the first time because I was not a Paramore fan before then. The second one is the album California by Blink-182. Listened to that while playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV. And then I listened to a whole bunch of a podcast called Behind the Bastards when I was playing Destiny probably a year ago. Mostly, like I said, mostly listening to podcasts and albums while playing grindy games where I'm not here for the story, and I've heard all the music in the game before, so I'm just here for to do my weekly or daily chores and then also listen to something at the same time. My bonus throwback that I can remember is playing 1080 snowboarding and the very first Backstreet Boys album. So sometimes that Backstreet Boys songs will come on from that album. It takes me right back to playing 1080 snowboarding on my Nintendo 64
Where you have
in 1998.
The panda is the one that, like, the hidden character you could unlock.
Yeah.
The snowboarding
you can do
panda.
front flips and back flips.
Ah, so cool.
Yeah.
1080. That's the best.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't know if I ever successfully pulled off a 1080. That game was really hard to do tricks in.
It was very hard to do tricks in. Thank you, Burger Champ. Well, this next email is from Will in Texas. He says, "What's up, Mike and Tyler? I thought I would answer your question about house rules. My brother and cousins and I would definitely set rules for things like GoldenEye, but it actually kicked it up a notch in college. We used to play Super Smashed Bros on Project M. We'd turn the Pokeballs on maximum and drink for 4 seconds if a legendary was found and 7 seconds if a Goldeen was hatched." That's a lot of drinking. We also played Beerio Kart, which was where you had to finish 2 beers before the Grand Prix was over. And there was no drinking and driving. So if you started driving, you were done drinking for that race.
So it's who can drink the fastest, because then that gets you a head start in the
driving
in the Mario Kart race. That's
great. That's fantastic. All in all, it made for a great Wednesday night. Did you guys do anything like this in college? Will from Texas. Just a Wednesday, just a normal Wednesday. I think we would kind of, I'm trying to think of how we would do it. We wouldn't really have, do something and drink, because we'd all be playing Call of Duty, and so it would really just be you die, you pass the controller. We never played it with all of us in the game. Instead, we just sat with one controller and passed it around as matches would end. And you would just, we would just drink, but it was no rules. Did you have a rule for drinking in video games?
Not in college. I didn't drink in college at all. So I've seen people play Mario Kart. The rule I always saw was no drinking and driving, but you can pull over to the side of the road if you want to drink more. So there were strategies where you could go first, get way ahead, pull over, and then do your drinking, and then continue.
I guess I would also get drunk and Wii bowl, but that just feels like bowling. So I don't know if that's really a house rule.
It's just regular bowling.
It's just regular bowling. But these are great. These are great house. I love the turn the Pokeballs on maximum and see if a Goldeen or Legendary was found.
That's pretty good.
That's great. Thank you for the email, Will.
Next one here from Corey. He says, "Hey, Mike and Tyler, Corey from New Hampshire here to tell you you're not alone in not getting into The Witcher 3.
Thank you.
I personally tried at least 3 times to get into and play this masterpiece of a game, supposedly, and for the life of me, it's just not holding my attention. The last time I tried was about a year ago, and I got up to the point where you meet Yennefer, and I just kind of dropped off after that point. For me, personally, I think the map is just too big and dense, and I get overwhelmed with all the options. The combat also wasn't that great, in my opinion. Eventually, I'll try again because I honestly want to enjoy it, but I don't know if I ever will. Also, I have an episode request. I've been replaying Bully recently and would love an episode on Rockstar games. Keep on keeping on, guys. Regards, Corey."
How have we not done Rockstar stuff yet? I mean, I know how because it's just too much to talk about, but that's definitely on our list. And I feel like we got to talk about Bully because that's like the cult classic of Rockstar games, you know?
Yeah, that's the one that never got a sequel, but everyone you talked to about it loved it.
Yeah, I just I need to know. And I've watched videos on Bully also, like recently, because I missed the train on that game and I was like wanted to know what it was all about. So that would definitely be something interesting to talk about. And as far as Witcher 3 goes, thank you, Corey. I think the overwhelming sensation of getting onto a map of a game and just feeling like it's too big is something that I get more and more now. And it makes it really hard for me to play open world games like that.
Me too.
Where I'm just like, oh man, it just feels like these are chores. Look at all these chores I have to do now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally get you, Corey. Thank you for the email. All right, this next one is Gabe from Orange County. Says, "What up, party people? Can you believe the Nintendo 3DS is 10 years old?" I didn't even know that. Yeah. What are your favorite games on the 3DS? I think mine would be Zelda: A Link Between Two Worlds. Yuga was a great villain. Question 2, what games would you like to take on the speedrun challenge in? Oh, this is two great questions. I think for me, my favorite 3DS game is pretty recent because I beat it last year, but that Fire Emblem Awakening was so great, and I'm a big fan of that. That would be my favorite 3DS game. Speedrun challenge, it would have to be a game that I know so I could then get to know the speedrun version of it better. And it would probably be, so like Super Mario World comes to mind, Super Mario 3 comes to mind, like games I've beaten multiple times in that.
Yeah, I'd have to go with like Ocarina of Time or maybe Star Fox.
Yeah, and I'd want to go kind of more retro because then I feel like it would be a little bit friendlier. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe it wouldn't be friendlier and I should do a different game. Like maybe even like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the first one for N64, just to get through the game as fast as possible, you know, like I think it would involve like if in Tony Hawk it would involve like stopping in the middle of a contest when you know if you gotten a gold medal and then just moving on. But yeah, that would be something. So I guess those 3 games, Super Mario 3, Super Mario World, or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 on N64 would be my 3 speedrun challenge games I would go for. What about you? What do you got, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it'd be Ocarina of Time, maybe Star Fox. I don't know how good Star Fox is because it's kind of on rails, so I don't know how much
64?
faster you could go through it. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably what I'd pick just because I know it so well. If I had to do a speed run for a game, I think it would be Ocarina of Time. I guess that's what I have to say. As far as my favorite 3DS game goes, I'm gonna have to agree. Link Between Worlds was awesome, and I didn't play that many 3DS games. Like I played Pokemon X version. I got almost to the end of it, but I didn't really stick with much on the 3DS. So I don't really have like a lot of great 3DS memories.
Yeah, I mean, I played the Fire Emblem, and then I played Sun and Moon, Pokemon Ultra Moon, and I was talking to Tyler about this earlier, but I just haven't been able to beat a Pokemon game to save my life. I play up to the Elite Four, and then I just kind of stop.
Yeah,
and it's because I don't want that grind. I don't care about that 10 to 15 level grind you have at the end of the game, where you got to get your Pokemon up to like 60 or whatever so you can face the Elite Four. And I also like, getting to know the team comps and like there's no like easy guide. Like these are the Pokemon you need. And it turns out I haven't been leveling up those Pokemon this whole time. So it's like I got to go back and it feels like a lot, you know?
Yeah.
But thank you, Gabe, because this is a very good question. Two very good questions. And I want to know if I'm going to look up some Tony Hawk Pro Skater speedruns out of curiosity.
See how fast they are. Probably pretty fast. So Dr. Bug here says, OMG. Hi again, boys, with a Z. So I just found out about this Casio console. Please check out this TikTok attached. Also, Dope Froggy TV, but that's aside from the point. I would love to hear y'all talk more about this console or other things Casio. Hope y'all are extra well. XOXO, Dr. Bug. And so Dr. Bug also included a video of this old Casio console that looks like it was marketed towards girls. It looks like, knowing nothing about this console, I'm going to have to say like 1993, 1994-ish. And it had like a Polaroid printout thing in it too, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would want to... And like it prints stickers, and the stickers look really good.
Yeah.
I kind of miss this like Game Boy like camera, and it would print the picture, and like or Game Boy printers, and all these weird peripherals you could get for your handhelds and consoles back in the day. I think they're pretty cool. So this is a really cool thing. I'll share this TikTok on the Discord because this is a really, really good email, and I'm super stoked about it. And I do like this Casio console a lot, and I think it would be something worth covering.
I agree.
So I will put that on the list. Gosh, the list just gets longer and longer at this point. It's an absolute mess. Yeah, but
we
it's
can't
good.
quit till we finish the list.
Yep, we're never quitting. So there we go. Thank you, Dr. Bug. All right, last email from Chris in Orlando. Finally is the name of the subject.
Finally, we got to our last email.
Yeah, finally we got to our last email. And hey guys, after what seems to be decades of me requesting the history of Metroidvanias, it's finally happening. I finally listened to all the Metroid and Castlevania episodes that have been released up until the 16-bit era. I'm living for all this content, and it makes my heart nostalgic and happy. I just wanted to write in and say that I played Super Metroid, Prime, Fusion, and I hated them. I then, for some reason, decided to play Aria of Sorrow, and I fell in love with it. Then I played Symphony of the Night and fell in love with the gameplay style even harder. A friend of mine kept asking me to retry playing the Metroid games, so when I finally tried playing them again, I fell in love with them. The point of this inane rambling is to bring up the fact that Metroidvanias might not be for everyone until they find the right one. There are many different styles with varying game lengths, but they all revolve around somewhat the same concept: explore, jump, attack, collect new power-up, and keep exploring. They differ so much that there's a Metroidvania where you explore a bug kingdom, and that's in Hollow Knight, and there's another one where you're a luchador exploring a Mexican folklore world, which is Guacamelee, which is an amazing game. I've played the first Guacamelee. It's so good. I need to play the second one still. So there's definitely a Metroidvania out there for everyone. And if for some reason you haven't found the correct one for you, please keep exploring. I'm sure you'll find yours soon. Also, a Super Metroid book club sounds amazing. Count me in if that ever happens. With love, Chris from Orlando. Yeah, Guacamelee is such a good game. Have you played Guacamelee?
I have not.
Oh, it's so good. They have Guacamelee 2 is on Game Pass. I think they took Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition, which is what the first one is called now that you could buy. It's like kind of a little bit redone, and it's so fun. It's such a cute, fun video game that I adore, and I really need to play the second one now. There's so many games to play. I got to put that on my backlog because it's on Game Pass. But I actually really didn't think I liked this genre until I played Guacamelee, and then Dead Cells also made me realize, because I didn't even realize when I was playing Guacamelee that I was playing a Metroidvania style game. I was just like, oh, fun platformer that's kind of funny and silly. And then I played Dead Cells on Tyler's recommendation, actually, and really dig it. And I'm like, oh, I do like this genre. So I totally see this, Chris, 100%.
Yeah. You know what's worth checking out now that you're a Metroidvania fan?
Sure.
It's not the greatest Metroidvania game, but there's a game called Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. You can find it on wherever you find games. It's on Steam, I think. But it's a side-scrolling Batman Arkham game that's a Metroidvania-style game, which is really cool.
unlock Batman powers as you go along.
Yeah, it was originally a PlayStation Vita game. And then, of course, nothing on the PS Vita did well, so they ported it everywhere else. But it's worth checking out, and it goes on sale all the time. You can probably find it for free somewhere.
What is it with people losing their powers and you having to get them again? You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's so frustrating. It's such a frustrating thing that these video game characters keep doing. It's a real bummer.
I just
for
want
us
to keep
players.
gaining powers.
Yeah, why not just keep making up powers, you know?
Yeah.
We're going to make our new game called Oops All Powers, and it's just all power-ups, and you start with all of them in the beginning, and it's very boring. No change the whole time.
I have a question of our listeners after reading this email. Send us an email if there was ever a genre of games that you couldn't get into, but then after you played the right one, like Symphony of the Night or Aria of Sorrow is what it was for Chris, after that, you could go back and play other games in that genre and finally appreciate them and figure out why people like them so much. Send us an email because I would love to hear about that. Do you have any off the top of your head you can think of, Mike?
Oh, that I played and I didn't like the genre, and then I played one like way later and I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would be Metroidvanias, honestly. Probably.
Yeah.
Only because I'd heard that term so much but never really knew what it meant. And then playing Guacamelee and playing Dead Cells and stuff. And then also I've heard Hollow Knight's good for so long. I just need to play it.
Yeah, me too.
Also, I mean, really, you could even say that for me about MMORPGs, because I really avoided them like the plague until I was probably like starting to play Destiny. And then that made me kind of realize how fun like raiding is and stuff. And like, I never would have played WoW. I mean, unless you were there, and also without playing Destiny first.
Yeah. Of like seeing the things in this other game that you love, like, oh, you can kind of map them to how, like, whatever you thought World of Warcraft was before that, you sort of were able to map this Destiny onto it, which makes you feel a little more familiar with it.
Yeah, I liked the idea of MMORPGs, and I was a Guild Wars kid that played that game, and there was like none of my friends played it, and I really treated it like a solo experience, and it just wasn't that much fun. I didn't really get it. And then, so that kind of threw me off of it. And then jumping into Destiny and then playing WoW. And now I'm like, oh, I get this. Like we've been talking about Final Fantasy 14 about me jumping into that now. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, you can totally hack that now because you played WoW. It's very similar. I don't want to say it's the same game, but they're very similar.
And Tyler wants to be a red mage for life, you know?
Red mage is the best class ever.
But yeah, I really want to know what listeners think. If they have a genre they didn't really play and then they got into it because of a game that came out way later and they're like, oh, I do like these games.
Yeah. I think for me it was card games. Like I still don't particularly like card games, but I like tried to play Magic for a little while in like high school, I think. And I was like, I don't care about this. I don't understand what's happening. I don't want to understand. This is not fun. And I sort of stayed away from card games for a long time. And then Hearthstone came out. And I liked the Warcraft characters, so I played a little bit of Hearthstone. And Hearthstone is a great, like, baby's first trading card game, you know? But after I became familiar with a lot of concepts through playing Hearthstone, then when I went to play a game like Legends of Runeterra, it made a little bit more sense, which makes Magic make a little bit more sense to me now. And so now I can go back and, like, see people play Magic and go, oh, yes, I get it. Even if I'm still not super into card games, I can be like, oh, yeah, this is not a bad game. I just
Magic,
didn't get it.
The learning curve for Magic is pretty steep to like get into it now. Like I have friends that we played the card game in real life back when we hung out in real life, and it was they were teaching it to me, and I was just like, man, there's so much to it, you know. That I played in a tournament before the pandemic, and I got beaten by a 10-year-old, which was pretty rad. So like I was trying to get into it before the pandemic hit, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to learn and get into, but I do agree that Hearthstone is a great way to like get into that genre. And Legends of Runeterra is even better because the whole attack and defense thing is more representative of like a Magic turn, you know, where you'd be attacking or defending. So it's pretty neat. I like it. Cool. Well, we have one review that I want to read. It's very quick. Okay. It's very short. It is from Chukies138. And it's Best Gaming Podcast, 5 stars, and the description inside of the review is Best Gaming Podcast. So thank you so much, Chukies138. You're the best. It's quite the compliment. Thank you. And if you want to send us a review, that's great wherever you listen to us, or you can just really tell your friends about us. That's the best way, honestly. We don't really do any advertising for this podcast, so If you could tell your friends, that'd be great. You can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can join our Discord by going to either my Twitter at mecoletta, MECOLETTA, and going to the pinned tweet there. You could also just send us an email and I'll send you an invite. And then you can find Tyler on Twitter at SneakerElf, ELPH. Talk to Tyler, tweet at him. So
I do see when you tweet at me. I don't tweet a lot. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter, but if you tweet at me, I'll get the notification. I will see it.
Yeah. Just know that when we're not on Twitter, we're probably going down a YouTube rabbit hole, right?
Yep.
That's what's happening. Well, I think that's it for the day. So with that, you want to say bye to everybody, Tyler?
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.